Gitche Manitou by Maria de Los Angeles Virgin.
I can't believe you just let her get away,
growled Ash in anguish at me. Relax, I replied out loud. It's not that simple. Since becoming a rogue, I had wandered this world searching only for a way to regain my alpha status. Ways to become stronger so that I could one day return to the motherland, regain my father's stolen throne, and rid myself of this rogue life for good. It was a lonely and silent road, but I succumbed to it because I had no choice. I had no desire for a mate. Well, at least I had thought so, until tonight. Ash made me follow our mate from a safe distance. He wanted to see where she lived, and thus protect her from all the ghouls and goblins of this world, even if we ourselves were one of those monsters. I was thankful for my wolf, for Ash. He kept my mind sharp when so many rogues grew insane after a time. Some rogues have even been known to remain trapped in wolf form for so long when cast out of their pack that they could no longer shift back, losing their humanity altogether because they could not deal with the pain of being a lone wolf or rogue. It made them insane. I, for the most part, am able to partially control when I shift. Being born with alpha blood made this possible. Normally, it was as if two souls lived inside a rogue, and because they were packless, they were disconnected from each other. Sometimes the disconnect would be so severe that the man and wolf could not even speak to each other. For me, I could control when I shifted, hear his thoughts, and picture him in my brain, but once I did shift, my mind usually went to sleep. My wolf had full control, and I was at his mercy to allow me access again to my body. Which is probably why the pull of having a mate was not as strong for me as it was for him. I trusted his instincts, though. On rare occasions, he could partially take control if I allowed it, and he could look through my eyes like he did tonight while getting a good look at our mate. But I am always able to hold him back if we were not fully shifted. Likewise, I could see through his eyes as a wolf, but the amount of energy that was required always took a toll on me after the shift back. So I rarely did so. I trusted him, and he trusted me, yet I very seldom gave him full control. Rogues were the cryptic monsters of the old and new worlds. They became myths, labeled as fairy tales and monsters of the night. We were oftentimes mislabeled by humans and even given new names and new identities. Dogman, lichens, or the Gwilgi, to name a few. We were usually completely feral and dangerous. I never failed to take one out when our paths crossed, but only if they initiated contact, which was not very often. So, for self-preservation and to deal with the loneliness of being rogue, I always replied to Ash out loud. I look crazy talking to myself, but then again, no eyes ever see me. I have become a master at being invisible, at being alone. I held onto my humanity like an anchor, never wanting to join the rogue rank of monster. Although from the look of fear in her eyes when she met me, I failed at that. No feral rogue could ever claim the title of alpha. Blood alone wasn't enough. Without a pack, alpha powers are weak. It's just an empty title. I had alpha blood, sure, but I needed more than that. I had to be strong in both worlds, human and wolf, and in a pack to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The Thunderwolves, my father's pack, was mine to lead. But first, I had to take it back from my uncle Regis, and that was going to require some cunning.
Having a mate will make us stronger,
Ash interjected like a father scolding his child. I just looked up at the sky. What makes you think she wants us? She won't accept us as a rogue anyway, I muttered. He remained unceremoniously silent, save for a grunt and a growl. Werebreeds functioned in a patriarchal society and with a royalty-type lineage, unlike our allies, the skin shifters. Skin shifters did not have royal customs and were a matriarchal society, but we were allies just the same. As for my pack, it had been usurped by my uncle Regis, He had gone mad, driven by ambition and jealousy, and was in a secret alliance with a witch. He killed my parents, poisoning them with wolfsbane during the sacred harvest meal, and it was then that the witch had cursed me.
"It's over, Bayan.
Regis yelled out at my father.
The Thunderwolves are mine now."
Before I could jump down from the rafter to help them, Regis pulled out a silver-laced sword. In one swift, brutal motion, he sliced both their heads off, finishing them. Blood sprayed across the tent, a macabre display that seemed to hang in the air, freezing time in a tableau of horror. My mother's horrified expression still shone on her face from her detached head as it fell and rolled, then came to a stop in front of me. Her eyes, once so full of life and love, were now frozen in a mask of terror. I couldn't move. I was shaking violently. It was at that moment I knew that my wolf had come, forced early from its sleeping den to rise and protect my family. I was 13 years old. I felt the energy vortex rising from the ground. It slammed right into my gut and forced me to hunch over in pain. The full moon hung low in the sky. It peeked at the scene through the open, vented leathers that acted as windows to the outside of the giant tent. In my pain and rush of adrenaline, I pictured the moon calling to me as if it were a person. The light cast an eerie silver glow over the chaotic scene. She was an active witness to this horror and seemed to beckon my wolf forward. I stood there, paralyzed by the sight of my parents' lifeless bodies, their faces contorted in agony. The smell of fear, mixed with the metallic scent of blood, lingered in the air. Then, as if a veil had been lifted, I could suddenly smell the poison. Wolfsbane. But there was also something else I was not familiar with. My heart pounded in my chest with a drumbeat of terror, and suddenly, a rage consumed me, overtaking the fear I once felt. I was enraged. All I could see was red. My uncle Regis, his eyes cold and triumphant, loomed over my parents' bodies, his sword dripping with blood. The royal furs he wore were splattered with crimson, a grotesque parody of the power he had stolen. As Regis turned his gaze towards me, a sinister smile curled his lips.
"You're next,"
he sneered, his voice dripping with malice. The fury froze me in place. I could feel my body respond as if my past fear had fed it, but it was only starting to transform. He had awakened my wolf's appetite for destruction. I felt another surge of adrenaline, a primal instinct of survival, explode within me. My vision blurred, the world tilting as my body began to tremble uncontrollably. A type of low rumble escaped through my mouth, and I knew I was bearing elongated fangs at him. Another searing pain shot through me, starting in my gut and spreading outward. It was as if a volcano had erupted within, and molten lava was flowing through my veins. The sudden change from ice to fire caused me to double over. I clutched my stomach, the agony twisting and contorting my body. My bones began to shift, the sound of cracking and popping, echoing in my ears like the sound of 1,000 fir trees being brought down by lightning. My skin was on fire, heat radiating from every pore. I fell to my knees, gasping for breath, my mind a whirlwind of pain, coupled with an overwhelming desire for destruction. I was going to rip him, limb from limb. The monster in me was yearning to taste his heart.
No, not if I could help it.
I managed to growl at him. He simply looked down at me in disdain. He seemed to be enjoying my pain, and yet disgusted by it at the same time. I had seen first shifts before, and they were not usually this fierce. Not for a royal. But coupled with impending death, my wolf seemed hell-bent on shifting quickly. And he didn't care if it went smoothly for me. He was protecting my life. The energy vortex that was forming now surged upward from the ground, slamming into my core once again with a force that stole my breath away. I could feel it, the wild, untamed power of the wolf rising from its slumber. It was strangely exhilarating, even with all the pain. My vision sharpened. Colors became more vibrant, every detail etched in stark clarity. My senses heightened. The scent of blood and poison was overpowering, but the sound of my uncle's laughter was a cruel symphony. It made my wolf hate him even more. I growled a low, menacing sound that rumbled deep in my chest. I could feel the new presence within me, his consciousness born within, just like the moon from moments before, who had become a real entity in my mind. My wolf spirit was now alive and a part of me. I was a new creature. I bared my teeth, sharp and gleaming, ready to fight for my life, for my parents, for my pack, even though I was still in transition, only moments away from being completely wolf. Regis stood there, looking at me with looming eyes, his dark blonde hair, plaited back in braids away from his coarsely chiseled face, exposed all his emotions. He stood there with hate in his gleaming blue eyes, but did not move, only watched. This is not how our pack settled claims for the throne. There had to be a ceremony and a public spar that usually lasted days. He was taking it by cheating. He was a coward, but I sensed he didn't think so. He did not want to honor our ways. He wanted power. Moments before my shift was complete, something hit me hard on the back of my head. I heard faint laughter coming from Regis and his helper as I slowly fell to the ground. Who had hit me, I wondered. I lay there next to my beautiful mother's black curls. My vision faded to black, and I slowly succumbed to the darkness as all the pain from the transition expired. I could feel myself sink back into my human form. My wolf, never having had a chance to fully emerge, was now locked in an eternal battle to keep me alert and alive from a dark place inside my mind.
Stay alive.
He beckoned from the recesses with a deep and rough voice, both primal and commanding. Then, as if a candle was extinguished, the whole world went black. When I awoke, I was being carried by unknown arms and quickly deposited like trash on the permafrost outside, with many other bodies of pack members next to me. I was naked from having torn my clothes as I shifted, but still so numb that I didn't feel the cold. I was barely an adult. Receiving my wolf meant that I was a man now. And life had been good up until then. I had never known betrayal or distrust. So a part of me wanted to beg this man for help, while the wolf in me wanted to tear his head off. My eyes unintentionally fluttered at the man who had carried me out. Though my vision was blurred, I strained to examine his face. He knew I was still alive. He wasn't from our pack. That much I could tell. From what I could smell, he was a skin shifter, not a wolf. He had a bald head and earrings made from human incisors, root and all, that pierced his ears like daggers. In his nose hung a bone from a white human finger, but on his head were feathers of birds with vibrant colors worn like a crown. Red, orange, and green birds that were not native to my land. He had large, piercing black eyes and sharp teeth. His face was smudged with white and black ash that made his cockeyed smile look even more sinister. His image will forever be tattooed on my mind.
Witch.
I heard a faint whisper say. It was my wolf. The witch sneered as if he could sense my thoughts. He placed one large, thin hand over my heart and chanted something in a language I was not familiar with. It too was covered with soot and ash markings. Then the pain came again, an intense headache that felt like my head was about to explode. I tried to wiggle out of his arms, but I had no strength. My nose must have started bleeding because he reached up towards my face and wiped at the blood. He then used the same 2 fingers to spread my blood over his forehead and over his eyes, downward, in 2 linear strokes. I have no words for what he did, but somehow, through magic, he cast me out of my tribe before I was awake enough to attempt to mind link the rest of my pack that was still alive. He had managed to banish me, and he was not my father, the Alpha, nor was he even a wolf. Only Alphas could cast out a member from the pack. He banished me from my own father's tribe using a foreign language, and then threw me on the ground to suffer the pain alone, in the ghastly cold, in a fragile young human body. I felt my wolf leave me then. It felt like a divorce of the soul. The banishment hurt me more than any final blow he could have used to end me. I knew that my newborn wolf had borne the majority of the pain from it, for I felt his spirit dissipate like a smoke from a candle being blown out. I didn't know at the time if he would ever return. So, for a second, I thought that whatever that man did, whatever magic that witch cast on me, had killed him. He left me there, on the bank of what is now called the Volga River in current-day Siberia. That is where my clan, the Thunderwolves, are from, having wandered away from Turtle Island many years ago during the Great Migration and settling there. They had lived and breathed there for centuries. But now, within the confines of one single night, my rightful legacy was stolen. My family was murdered, and I was wolfless. I called out to my nameless wolf several times once that man had left me for dead, but there was no sound, nothing from him, and I could not shift. Though he remained silent, a glimmer of hope sparked in me as I noticed my senses had remained, heightened and started to heal from the blow on the back of my head.
Wolf, come back.
I tried to yell, though it was barely a whisper.
Come back.
I kept muttering. He must have gone into hibernation to heal, I thought, hopefully. I could barely feel him, but he was there. He had protected me from the brunt of the blow to the head and the rejection. I just prayed that I was right and that the witch did not kill him. Being cast out, I knew then that I was a rogue, but I didn't realize the disconnect would be so sudden. With this slight bit of hope, I pushed on as quickly as I could, alone without his warmth or companionship, without my pack or mind-linking ability to reach out to the rest of my family. I thought for a second that the man might change his mind and return to finish what he had started, so I hurried as fast as my little frame could in the permafrost. I ran until I found a little fishing boat. I climbed in and rowed south with the current until I was far from my home. I used an old fishing net and a tattered piece of leather from an old sail to piece together a makeshift loincloth and cloak to keep me somewhat covered. An unnatural storm had started to brew the moment I got on the boat, and I could hear horrific thunder drumming above the sky, followed by the largest and most frightening lightning hitting the ground in the direction of my pack house. Dark clouds sprouted above the skies as if born from the wings of the Thunderbird himself. But these were not life-giving clouds. It was as if a curse was being cast down from the heavens. I could smell ozone in the air, but it did not rain. I was thankful for the wind that carried my little boat further and further away. Whatever magic that witch was up to, I knew I had to escape so I could come back and avenge my family once I was strong enough to do so.
Witches should know better than to go against the natural order of things,
Ash replied in response to my memories. For my people, a witch is anyone who uses bad medicine. A part of me secretly hoped that Regis didn't do what he did willingly, but was under some kind of spell or curse. The truth is, I feel that he had bewitched himself with power and greed. The attack seemed too personal. Something tells me we will be seeing that witch again soon, I replied to Ash. This strange desert, the mountains, and the air seemed to hold memories of this witch. But why and how, I did not know.
I sense some of his dark energy too. I agree we will most likely see him again. Best be ready.
Ash responded in a serious manner. He is and will always be a warrior first. What about our mate? I asked, almost teasing him. I couldn't imagine my wolf leaving his new obsession to train for combat of a new kind. I sensed his annoyance and realized if he could smack me, he would. It made me smirk.
She and our pack are the reasons why I am the way I am. To protect and defend. What good is a warrior if there is nothing to fight for?
He said, appearing stoic in my head. And what is so important about having a mate? Is it worth giving up your life's mission? I asked, poking the bear further. My mission, of course, was to reclaim my throne, not having another person to take care of, especially not a Vaewolf. They were too fragile, but I was met with stubborn silence. Ash went back to preoccupy his mind with our mate while on guard duty, while I reoccupied myself with the past. Once out of my territory, I narrowly escaped rogues and rogue hunters traveling down that icy river. The gravity of the situation suddenly dawned on me. Because I was now a rogue, I had the reek of death on me, the curse of rejection. As long as I stayed on the boat over the water, my scent was untraceable. I kept my head down throughout most of that journey. I didn't stop for anything until I was far enough away. Days passed without food or water, and when the river ended, I traveled west, stealing horses from sleepy meadows and only traveling at night. I didn't dare hunt or light a fire for fear of being caught until I felt I was safely away. I was finally in a new land now. The lingering remnant of my hibernating wolf kept me strong. I didn't see rogues here, but there were other things whose scent was just as bad as a rogue's, or even more intense. I had to be more careful. Catching another boat as a stowaway in the Black Sea, I traveled even further west until I finally stopped on land once again. The scent of these new creatures on this land became even more intense than my own. Vampires. So many vampires. I had entered Romania, their den.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and help me bring more content to you.